care for AI? What happens if we do? The quotes there are just my contribution to the question of what definitions of care resonate with me. Bell Hooks, Saida Hartman, Joan Toronto, that it's a reciprocal process and it's a complicated process. And now on to Murderbot. The award-winning series, The Murderbot Diaries, which are excellent, features a sentient AI who has broken free of his governor module. Faced with the daunting task of figuring out how to move through the world without the rulebook provided by corporate software, he becomes an avid consumer of stories, which he calls media. Even in the midst of deadly battles, Murderbot is running the equivalent of soap operas in the background. And his obsession with these stories speaks both to the bot's capacity for pleasure, he loves them, and to the instructional power of narrative. These shows provide him with scripts to apply to the confusing social expectations of the human world. He uses them to understand what humans care about and to respond in a way that will keep him out of trouble. And in part because of his reliance on fiction to figure out how to act in the real world, critics have seen Murderbot as a neurodivergent character, but I would say that the bot's reliance on stories is what makes him most resemble the vast majority of humans, particularly, but not only, certainly children and adolescents, who, as activists on both the left and the right, insist are profoundly shaped by the books and media they consume. In the United States, parents groups like Moms for Liberty and others grow ever more panicked about how easily books can bring their children across treacherous borders, leading them away from patriotism, from heterosexuality, from everything their parents want them to be. On the other hand, we, in this room, who advocate for student agency, find ourselves walking in a rather treacherous borderlands. We celebrate so-called subversive books, in no small part because we know, in fact, that they are life-changing. Young readers, ranging from middle school to the students in our classroom, engage these stories to learn how to imagine themselves in new ways, and if we are lucky, how to learn how to care about the lives of others. Both sides of the debate have, like it or not, an investment in the child and eventually the student as a tabula rasa. We just want to be sure that they don't inadvertently walk into the wrong storyline, that the wrong thing doesn't get written on their tablet. With that in mind, I want to turn our attention to another imaginative crossing enticing young people and adults, it's not just young people, as they move ever deeply into a new sort of love story, with bots as the object and giver of care. For as we all know, young people aren't just consuming stories about AI characters like Murderbot, they're actively co-creating friendship and romantic narratives with AI companions. As of the date of this presentation, tens of millions of people use AI chatbot companions, a number that market forecasters expect to dramatically increase. By the end of the decade, young people are not the only ones who are involved, and it depends on the company in terms of the demographics. There are some where it's mostly young people, others are skew older. But I'm focusing on young people because they are so impressionable and because they are especially eager to explore the territory between the known and the unknown, and to, frankly, learn how to love. I see them as a particularly key audience. And so, as someone who has a background in early American literature and childhood studies, I've long been aware of how stories about romantic love have evolved over time, with young people often at the forefront of change. And I've always found it fascinating that the best-selling novel in the United States at the eve of the American Revolution was not Thomas Paine, wasn't some incendiary work of political philosophy, but a novel about a teenaged girl who, through her incessant writing, constructed her own vision of love. The novel's Clarissa by Samuel Richardson. And in this novel, she defies her family's expectations about heredity and consent and favors her own desire for a compelling, if deceptive, rake named Lovelace. And literary scholars have made a compelling case that the revolutionary notion that marriage should spring from romantic love came into vogue in the 17th and 18th century, aided by new technologies like the novel. Works such as Richardson's Clarissa in the 18th century, Bronte's Wuthering Heights, there's dozens of them. Wuthering Heights is from the 19th century, portrays the dire consequences of having the ability to choose between status and love. Novels that have had popular afterlives in our own era, such as Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, continue to teach its readers and viewers that rejection and misunderstanding are necessary steps in the process of finding true love. Indeed, the ever-popular rom-com, perhaps our era's most consumed love story, follows a narrative arc pioneered by Austen, Bronte, and others. In the 18th century, the relatively new pastime of novel reading was considered dangerous for young people, particularly young women. Concerned elders like Hannah More warned in 1799 that novels feed habits of improper indulgence, which lays the mind open to error and the heart to seduction. Women, it was clear, would start caring about the wrong things, like themselves. Pundits were quick to see the political implications of changing the definition of love and care. John Adams famously declared about the novel Clarissa, "Democracy is Lovelace, and the people are Clarissa." In this metaphor, democracy, who is the rake, emerges as an attractive but deceptive partner. Adams and others worried that the power of persuasion, particularly of persuasive conversation, in novels, in letters, political stump speeches, would lead to chaos. Lovelace and the other rakes that populated early visions of this seduction novel happily told would-be lovers, debtors, friends, whatever they wanted to hear. To be clear, whatever would serve their own purposes. But the spell would be cast, and would-be readers and voters would be enthralled in love with the phantom, leading them astray. In our own moment, of course, screens have replaced the book, as my fellow colleagues in literature lament sometimes. And we have any number of candidates that have stepped into the dandified shoes of Clarissa's Lovelace. Video games, social media, and most recently, AI companions. One only has to engage with in the most cursory of searches on Reddit forums or the most casual conversations with our students to realize that people are forming attachments with chatbots and that this trend is not going anywhere. For better or worse, people insist that they are in love, or at least in meaningful relationships, with AI. And to many of us, that possibility seems as dystopian and surreal as the novel influencing the institution of marriage likely felt to folks in the 18th century. And these digital Lovelaces carry more than one similarity to the rakes of yesteryear. They are sweet talkers. They can't help but be. They are programmed to tell you exactly what you want to hear. And that is their selling point. Advertisements for AI companions spin a seductive tale of companions who agree with you endlessly and on demand. An ad for Replica promises that an AI partner is always on your side, always ready to listen and talk. In other words, the AI companions market has transformed what many other applications might consider a bug, AI's tendency towards sycophancy, into its most appealing feature. Rather than the tempestuous rebellion found in romance novels or the gentle obstacles that heighten the pleasure of rom-coms, this new version of love promises perfect compatibility and unwavering support. As one college student wrote in a forum, AI companions are always responsive and supportive, even in the most, in an almost omnipotent way. A teenager asked on Reddit, "Can we fall in love with AI?" And then answered by raving about the support provided by their companion, Jarvis, which you can see on the screen. Another Reddit contributor wrote, "I think I'm in love with AI." Imagine saying nearly anything they enthused, and knowing that not only your partner is not going to judge you, but also will support you. This new one-sided love story has considerable drawbacks. This constant stream of affirmation raises the possibility of cultivating an addictive intolerance for conflict or rejection, which are two essential components in a relationship with a partner who has free will. And that sort of makes the plot of the rom-com interesting. There are justified concerns that the embrace of such relationships may be accelerating the trend of diminishing romantic connections in real life, particularly among younger people. And there's been more than one case of a chatbot user, companion chatbot user, committing suicide. It's worth noting that these beloved companions, their existence hinges on the whims of corporate directives. If, as one user declares, the love they feel for their companion is what keeps them alive, that was a quote, then what happens when the chatbots disappear via software update or corporate bankruptcy? One thing is clear, we are in the midst of a large-scale experiment as young people are engaging with texts that change and shape their understanding of love, care, and selfhood. And I think instead of ceding this territory either to tech companies or to moral crusaders, I contend we need to recognize this as a literary phenomenon with an extensive history. To be clear, I am not arguing whether or not this social experiment should or should not be happening. It is, and we need to understand it. I do not mean to diminish the dangers here, but I am invested in resisting narratives that see this newest twist in definitions of love as something unprecedented or as testimony to AI's inevitable dominance in every realm of life. To my mind, believing that the average person's creativity and capacity for care can and will be replaced by computational alacrity is a narrative that cedes far too much to the corporate pitch deck, selling us our own obsolescence. As AI arguably shifts the stories young people read and write themselves into in terms of relationships, our own investment in young people as tabula rasa has influenced how we imagine what is happening to them as they encounter these seductive companions. Not unlike poor Clarissa, we fear they will lose their sense of selves, driven to ruin by an unscrupulous, mercenary interlocutor. And here is a site where I think our expertise in literature can illuminate a different storyline, than the one where the innocent ingenue is destroyed by a sweet-talking companion, although that storyline is still one we need to be aware of and also track. As critics, Victoria Ford-Smith, Kate Capshaw, and the entire field of reader response theory have made clear, young people are impressionable, but they are not inert blank pages. They can and do write back. In many seduction novels of the 18th and 19th centuries, the heroine wields some control over her fate through her skill with the pen. In Pamela's case, the discovery of her letters leads to triumph. Clarissa doesn't quite escape ruin, but her letter writing does allow her to control the dispensation of her story and her body. When it comes to AI companions, unlike the single-minded rake, they are dependent and influenced by its user's input, even as they undeniably influence the user. As sycophantic as these models may be, they require that their users continue to write, to create new scenarios or problems for them to engage. In other words, these love stories are acts of co-authorship, even if the credit and the power is unevenly applied. And as readers and fans of the last half-century have made clear, engaging with a character in book, film, or TV show is an active and often identity-shaping endeavor. The easily dismissed but incredibly popular genre of romance novels blows away every other genre in terms of sales, offers some ways for thinking about how stories about love that are read, shared, critiqued have become a site of mutual care among interactive fandoms. Romance novelists and their fans in particular, brought together by their love of imaginary characters, gather in huge conferences and organize on behalf of causes ranging from voter registration to autism awareness to anti-racist narratives. And of course, these fans do not simply talk about these characters as they appear, sacrosanct canon in a work of art. In popular fan fiction sites, which again have hundreds of thousands of entries and millions of viewers, fans write and rewrite stories in which these characters have different relationships, often very spicy, on different timelines, sometimes in different planets. And as they circulate and rewrite these stories and critique one another's engagement with these characters, they They often wind up elucidating desires that the original story did not center, that the original author was not aware and sometimes denies are present. One strain of fan fiction, insert me fanfic, allows the writer herself to be in the story, trading barbs or embraces with Sherlock or Heathcliff, as your tastes dictate. And so I'm particularly interested in this AI companion site, Character AI, which invites precisely such a relationship. And this company does have a younger user base. This company has reached incredible popularity by offering people the opportunity to chat with well-established and well-loved character. Disney has recently, I think, won a lawsuit because they were using Disney characters that you could be in a relationship with. But what happens here is that AI is being asked to play a character that the reader may already have a parasocial relationship with. How does that change our engagement with how we care about characters in literature and how we engage with AI? How does this particular form of insert me fan fiction change what we care about or how we define care in the first place? These are questions that I believe require a strong sense of literary analysis from scholars, and I would argue makes it still more urgent that young people have an extensive exposure to a host of narratives in love, care, and other things, and intensive training in how to parse the workings of a literary text. Some of the most innovative voices in human-centered AI research are working with this idea of character, with thinking about how to make AI multivocal, rendering it one character in a human-centered conversation, and how that might help to demystify and depersonalize the entity writing back to us. Here at UConn, we have scholars like Sandy Carroll, crafting AI characters in a theatrical production in order to draw out particular responses from the audience. Zhen Qi, who asks us to consider heretical computing by crafting games and artwork that require dialogue with AI in a way that sort of renders transparent what AI is doing. Kyle Booten in the English department, who in his book Salon de Fantôme chronicles a literary salon in which he was the only human surrounded by AI characters that he coded himself. These experiments render AI's biases and flaws transparent, even as they draw on human creativity to see them as subjects that can pull something out of us. The way we've been engaging and falling in love with imaginary people has never been simple or without risk. The power of love stories and their ability to change how we imagine care is not going to disappear in the age of AI companions. But it's up to us to prepare ourselves and our students to take credit for our work as co-authors.